What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy Jake and Bake here, coming at you with another edition of Sports Talk. Got a lot of topics to cover today, so let's just hop right into it. First on the agenda is Mack Brown officially resigning as the head coach of the University of Texas after 16 seasons. He had a great number of success at Texas, to include 4 conference division titles, a overall conference championship, and a national championship in 2005. He resigns at UT, being 26 on the NCAA football all-time wins list for a head coach with 244 wins. It'll be interesting to see where Texas decides to go when hiring a new head coach. They're obviously looking to get somebody a little bit younger who can try to revitalize a program that over the last 3 or 4 seasons has not had an enormous amount of success. Texas is only 30-20 over the last 50 games. Texas AD Steve Patterson announced in a statement on Saturday that Texas will need to hire a coach with extensive coaching experience at the college level. So it'll be really interesting to see who they decide to go with. Keeping the topic in college football, Jameis Winston was announced as your Heisman Trophy candidate, and he won by a landslide. It wasn't even close. Actually, it was the 7th largest margin of victory in Heisman voting history. This doesn't really surprise anyone. Jameis Winston has had a phenomenal season. The only thing I am surprised about Heisman voting is I thought that Andre Williams should have been a little bit higher on the list. I mean, he did rush for over 2,000 yards and ended up finishing 4th. But hey, the running back is no longer as a valued asset in college football as it was in the past. So I'm sure that had a factor. Winston also becomes the youngest player ever to win the Heisman at 19 years and 342 days. Now moving on, switching from NCAA football to the NFL. The playoff picture is continually getting more and more interesting week after week. First off, you had the Dolphins beating the New England Patriots, or should I say stunning the New England Patriots. This was an absolutely huge win for the Dolphins, who now, due to their remaining schedule, might be a possible 10-win team this season. Let that sink in for a minute. The Miami Dolphins could possibly win 10 games this year and take the second wild card slot into the playoffs. This is incredible, especially with all the injuries and the whole Jonathan Martin, Richie Incognito scandal. Credit the Dolphin coaching staff and those players for keeping their heads up and really pushing through and making a legitimate playoff push. Ryan Tannehill played great in the game last night, didn't make any mistakes, really showed a lot of poise, and helped that team come out with a huge victory that could possibly push them into the playoffs. They have the Bills and the Jets coming up, so I personally don't see them losing either one of those games. They may stumble against the Bills, but I think they beat the Jets pretty handily, and it's going to come down to that last game against the Bills. If they can win these last 2, they finish the season at 10-6 and will take that second wild card slot in the AFC. Also, the Saints suffered a devastating loss at the hands of the St. Louis Rams. And if you didn't believe that the Saints were terrible on the road before this game, and you still don't think that they're terrible on the road, then I don't know what football team you're watching. They have been absolutely dreadful on the road all season long. They are 7-0 at home and hold a 3-4 record on the road. They average just over 32 points at home and only 18 points on the road. I mean, this is a team that really is going to have to get it together because they are not going to win that division, in my opinion. I think they march into Carolina, and Carolina handles them, especially it being a road game and giving the fact that Carolina has a very good defense. So I believe Carolina takes that division, and the Saints are looking at a wild card slot, which means they're going to have to be on the road in their first playoff game. And with their track record on the road this season and even in previous seasons, I just don't think that they can get it done. Speaking of St. Louis is looking more and more like a legitimate contender. Maybe obviously not this season, but next season they could really make a push in their division. They have a lot of young talent. Their defense is extremely good. Quinn on that defensive line is a monster. He was unstoppable last night. The Saints' offensive line could not handle him whatsoever. And not to mention, they get the Washington Redskins' first-round pick due to the RG3 deal 2 years ago. And this is huge because the Washington Redskins right now, if the draft were to be held today, would have the second overall pick in the draft. And the St. Louis Rams are not far off from having a legitimate contending team. And maybe this high draft pick within the next couple of years gets the Rams into a position to be more competitive and possibly get back into the playoffs. Now, we'll get into a topic that personally disgusts me in the NFL, which would be the Dallas Cowboys' absolute debacle, losing a 23-point halftime lead to the Aaron Rodgers-less Green Bay Packers. I cannot tell you how frustrating this is as a Cowboys fan, to hold a 23-point lead against a team that is missing their star quarterback, one of their top 2 wide receivers, and their best tight end. There's no excuse for that. Dallas's defense is just an absolute disaster. Historically, one of the worst defenses that the game has ever seen. I believe Monty Kiffin should be fired. I'm not even sure if Monty Kiffin is still alive the way that defense is playing. It's a disaster. They can't stop anything. Not to mention the fact that you're running the ball great all game. DeMarco Murray, killing it, has over 7.5 yards per carry for the game, and then you only run the ball 6 times in the second half? Are you kidding me, Dallas? This is unacceptable. I can understand only running the ball 6 times in the second half if you're chasing a large deficit, but come on, Dallas. Really? You have a 23-point lead and you refuse to run the ball 6 times? With 3 minutes left in the game, why are you trying to pass? And yes, I know some of the blame here is going to have to fall on Tony Romo because he is the one that threw the interceptions. But come on, Dallas. You cannot put him in that situation at that point in time in the game. You're up by a score, only 3 minutes left in the game. Put the ball on the ground. Give it to your running back who has over 7 yards of carry for the game. Run some clock. At least take it down to the 2-minute warning. Make Green Bay use some timeouts. If anything else, you run time off the clock. You switch field position. Now Green Bay has to make another 80-yard drive in order to get into the end zone to get the winning score. I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened given Dallas's defense in the second half, which, like I said, couldn't stop anything. But at least you put your team in the best possible position to win. I just am absolutely befuddled by Dallas's decision to pass the ball late in that game, and it just does not make any sense to me. Now, on a little bit lighter note, we're going to move on to trades in baseball and free agent signings. We're going to talk about the Cano deal first of all, which I think is absolute insanity. Robinson Cano is probably the best offensive second baseman in the game today, but nobody, and I repeat, nobody deserves a 10-year, $240 million deal. The only person I would even consider giving that amount of money to would be Miguel Cabrera, and that's because he's probably the best hitter on the planet at this time and maybe at any time in history. Along with the Cano deal, I thought the Yankees paid a little bit too much for Jacoby Ellsbury. He is definitely a dynamic player and a huge dynamic player on both sides of the ball. But 7 years, $153 million is a little bit stout for a player of his caliber, but it is the New York Yankees. If you can afford to give him that, then you might as well. One that hits a little bit more close to home, Prince Fielder coming to the Texas Rangers. I, for one, loved this trade. I've been a big Ranger fan for my entire life. I love the fact that we get another big left-handed power bat in the middle of the lineup. And in that ballpark, with the way that the wind carries the ball out into right center field, I think Prince Fielder is going to have a breakout season. A little bit worried about how his performance will turn during the summer months when it becomes so dreadfully hot in Arlington. Players have been quoted as saying it's one of the worst places to play during the midsummer months, but he has spent a lot of time down here, especially in his youth, so maybe he will adjust quickly and be able to perform at a high level. staying with the Rangers, and Nelson Cruz and Sin-Soo Choo. This is a very interesting deal for the Rangers. Nelson Cruz is obviously an outstanding hitter, especially from a power standpoint, but he is a huge liability on the offensive side of the ball. I think he is one of the worst, or on the defensive side of the ball, excuse me. I think he is one of the worst defenders in all of baseball, and I just think he's way too much of a liability on the defensive side of the ball to give him any kind of monster deal. You know, he's looking for something around a 4-year deal worth probably around $70 million, and he is just not worth that from a defensive standpoint. On the other hand, you have Sin-Soo Choo. The Rangers have desperately needed a go-to leadoff hitter, somebody that can take the leadoff spot day in and day out and do what a leadoff hitter is supposed to do. Take a lot of pitches, take a lot of base on balls, and do anything it takes to get on base. And not only that, be smart when you get on the base pads. That was Ian Kinsler's biggest downfall as a leadoff hitter for the Texas Rangers. He would get on base, but then it seemed like almost every time he would make some kind of mental error and get picked off at first or get caught stealing at second. And that's not something you want out of your leadoff hitter. It completely kills the momentum of the game, especially after you got that leadoff guy on. It's just not something you want. That being said, Sin-Soo Choo was second in the league last year with a .455 on-base percentage. This is 100 points better than Ian Kinsler's. Not to mention, Choo also had 9 more home runs out of the leadoff position. He did not have as many RBIs as Kinsler, but that's not what you're worried about in a leadoff spot. You need somebody who's going to get on base and who's going to be smart on the base pads and able to score some runs and get some things going. Another problem with Choo is that he is going to cost a lot. His agent is Scott Boras, which means you're obviously going to have to pay top dollar. Scott Boras was also Jacoby Ellsbury's agent, and there are rumors that Sin-Soo Choo is looking for a Jacoby Ellsbury type deal of 7 years, $150 million or so. Sin-Soo Choo is a great player. I do not think a 7-year deal fits him anywhere on any team. I think you try to give him something around 4 years, $60 million or so would be something that most teams will be looking for. But he's going to find a suitor. Scott Boras is an agent that is known for finding the best deals for his clients, and he's going to eventually find somewhere to settle in where they're going to be willing to pay him all that money. So we'll see. Hoping the Rangers can pull something out and possibly get him for a decent value, but who knows. Well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up here, guys. Once again, please leave your comments, leave a like, subscribe if you like the channel. It revolves around you guys. Let me know what y'all want to talk about. Let me know what you think about the topics that we discussed today. And until next time, guys, peace out.